Chapter 3, the sharp endgame weapon, zugzwang. This is of course another big difference to the middle game. The attacker often uses this motive to make progress. With reciprocal zugzwang positions I will deal in the next chapter and the guideline related to it. Yeah. How to win here is white in Timman, Ipetov, Weigernsee 2013. Yeah, and this is a most important method to convert one extra piece against pawns. Zugzwang. Bishop c8 takes aim at the pawns, and Timman will bring Ipetov in zugzwang again and again. We will see. The direct king d3, on the other hand, to activate the king first and then attack everybody later, would spoil it. Now the guideline that the defender exchanges pawns comes to the forefront, and it's a draw. Whatever happens now after taking even g3 draws, as black manages to get all white pawns. Yeah, the guideline that the defender exchanges pawns is very good as well. I will deal with it separately in the chapter on rules on the right exchange. Yeah, but let's come back to zugzwang. Yeah, now the bishop just waits, and the pawns and the king there, they can't wait like this, like the bishop can. And now black has to make a concession. Here, check, followed by king d3, exploits it, and here directly king d3 comes. And yeah, zugzwang. Now a concession has been made, so activity is called for. h3 is met by, of course, g3. Keep the potential on the board, and yeah, white is winning. Okay, now activity is of course called for, and Timman brings Ipetov in zugzwang again. And here he resigned, as yeah, he will lose all pawns by zugzwang. And this indeed is very important. This is a usual way to convert an extra piece against pawns. Now, okay, zugzwang of course is also a major weapon against a knight. As a knight, when he moves, he loses control of all squares that were covered before he changes the color of the square he stands on with every move. Yeah. Lobe Huschenbeet, German Championship Bad Liebenzell, which was won in the end by Niklas Huschenbeet, by the way. Congratulations here also to his trainer Wolfgang Peiken. Yeah, it is very close, and white can still draw. King g5, king h5, and now zugzwang. Which pawn? Yeah, can you calculate here to the end? It's not so easy. And the real point is quite deep, as Markus Lammers had pointed out. b4 must be played, as the a pawn is very important in the forthcoming procedure. Yeah, and now black will again play for zugzwang by waiting with his bishop on the a7 g1 diagonal, but we will see the problem here. Yeah, the bishop cannot go to e3, so it must go somewhere else, and white can draw by king f4, a7, and yeah, white gets the h pawn, and it's a draw. Now d3 is still playable, but white must come back to the setup later in any case. Here is the last chance with king g6 to draw, as seen as we have just seen. And king e4 loses. Now the bishop converts by zugzwang. You guessed it. Zugzwang. So here goes the first pawn. Now you already know it. You know the procedure. Zugzwang, there goes the last pawn. Yeah, and then this is also lost by Zugzwang sooner or later, of course. And the last move of the game, the final Zugzwang, was game over. So Zugzwang is often used against a knight, very often. Against the bishop, it is it is more seldom, but it does happen, as in short Wróblewski. Short takes, of course, the shortest route, and white is winning in all cases. The black's pawns cannot move, and the king must stop white's king, so it's a duel of the bishops, and here white always wins. And now a waiting move. Black's bishop must go to e8, and there we have the Zugzwang position. Game over. The bishop must move, and then Wróblewski resigned, as short say pawn cannot be stopped. Yeah, a bishop can be brought into Zugzwang, but then it must have jobs on two different diagonals, and then of course it cannot do all jobs when it has to move. It is also possible to bring a rook into Zugzwang, but this is very seldom. But here Alex Landerman managed it, to bring Shirov's black rook into Zugzwang with bishop f. The pawn cannot be taken due to rook g5 check, so bishop f7 and king h3, and Shirov resigned. His rook must protect the g-pawn and stop e8 queen. His pawns cannot really move, and his king also can't move. Zugzwang is also often used by a queen in the fight against minor pieces, or trying to set up a fortress, as in Smearing Givon, European Club Cup 2012. But here it is still a draw. What to do with black to move? This is very important. Where to place the pawns? The pawns should be on light squares to complement the bishop and to give the f5 square to the knight. Now, as an outpost square for the knight. The knight has now outpost squares on dark and light squares, and the inroads are controlled, so this is a fortress. It's a draw. Zugzwang will not destroy it. While in the game, after king e7, white wins. The sharp endgame weapon Zugzwang will help Smearing to storm the fortress, and this is also another typical application of Zugzwang, of course. When you want to construct a fortress, you must always make sure that you can also make that not only everything is protected, but that you can also make moves. Make at least one move in all positions. Okay, yeah, so here's over. The pawns cannot move, the knight has no move, knight e6 is directly lost also. The bishop has no move, so only the king can move, but the king will lose the fight against the queen, of course. The queen will come closer and closer, and then the king will be forced away, so that white's king can then invade to d7. First Zugzwang, and Zugzwang to open the road for white's king. Yeah, after knight f3, by the way, king d6. Yeah, this threatens mate, so the bishop has to make room, and then, yeah, okay, now the bishop, the board was not large enough for the bishop. Now the bishop is vulnerable, and this is always exploited by white. And white always wins. The queen can now use her strong long-range power to create a double attack somewhere and win. Typical. All very typical. Yeah. So, Givon played king g8, but it doesn't help. White's king will invade to d7, and this will open up the gate of black's castle. Yeah, the knight has no squares. Or it could go to b5, but it doesn't really help, of course. and given resigned as his fortress is stormed by white's king. Another difference, a typical endgame attack, a difference to a middle game attack, as we have seen in the first chapter. Yeah, and one last example just to illustrate the great importance and role of zugzwang for the game of chess. King and queen against king could mate, even with if the defender would be allowed to pass, if this would be a valid move. But king and rook against king could not win without the help of the sharp endgame weapon zugzwang. You should really include this into your arsenal of motives in the endgame. Yeah, rook F. Okay, but just one sample line. You of course know how to mate with the rook and so on, but I just want to emphasize it. Zugzwang. Zugzwang. Okay, here, yeah. Yeah. And after king h4 is always the same then. Zugzwang and mate. And here, yeah, rook h5 check was a forcing move, but now zugzwang and mate. So this is really a fundamental part of the royal game and a very sharp endgame weapon for the attacker. In the next chapter we will see what happens if reciprocal zugzwang positions are lurking around. Here it was white, of course, is not really in zugzwang. White is here not in zugzwang. White could also move something else and would then stand be winning. But he uses the weapon against black, and whose king must now move, and then it's mate.